All right. Shall we pop it open?
Yes, sir.
Pop it open to the mic. Oh yeah, ASMR. Beer opening. Cheers. Boom. All right. That's always a nice start.
Gonna need a drink for how serious this one's gonna be.
Oh man, this session's gonna be good. We're gonna do a marathon over here. But okay, so this one, this episode, we're gonna tackle Calvinism in general, particularly soteriology. Soteriology. In other words, doctrine of salvation.
Yes.
So, because we talked about this before, right? Reformed theology kind of branches out everywhere. We're gonna talk about some of the more contested or famous aspect of it, which is salvation, right? How God saves people, how a person is to enter into salvation and all those things. But yeah, so we don't really need that much introduction anymore, do we? Chin Kang, you're from our fellowship. Zach, you're also from our fellowship. Right. And both of you are not from a Reformed church, but is it safe to say you guys have inclinations?
We have been indoctrinated into the doctrine of Calvinism. No.
Right.
We have a lot of inclinations. We have a lot of we're very open to it.
Right.
And yeah, we'd like to talk about it.
Right. Now, that is to say, I did grant Calvinism does get quite convoluted at times. It's intimidating. So I think we'll just do one episode where you guys throw me a bunch of those questions you have about Calvinism. So, yeah, how about you just start throwing some at me, or else I'll just bring up some common objections I hear.
All right, I will.
Net, yeah.
I will do that. I want to make quite clear. I am not going to do it justice, as in like there's like 600 over years of history.
That's
like,
fine. Yeah,
that's a lot. However, like dabbling into it, there are some questions I already have. There are some like I mentioned in a previous video about how I actually am disqualified to be a Calvinist, despite of how cool I would like don the suit and tie and Rolex and be like I am a superior being. No.
Yeah, which I don't think you're actually gonna get disqualified.
Really?
I don't know.
Yeah. You know, learning about it and whatnot. 3.4 point Calvinist. Suddenly, apparently, I can be a Calvinist now.
A lot of people they're starting to realize, oh, I'm a heretic if I deny all 5 points or even so they want to buy the cookie, but they still don't want to be Calvinist.
So I thought I'm disqualified, but apparently no, I'm another type of Calvinist.
yeah, which a lot of the Calvinists online will say, well, that's not real. If you're 4 point, you're still an Arminian. So, but yeah, anyway, there's clearly a lot of flavor to it. So let's tackle a lot of those points that might be into objection. What's the first one you want to bring up, Zach?
Yes. Okay. I want to make some caveats. Everything that I'm going to say, any objections that I have, it's really done in pursuit of truth. I do not mean to slander anybody, and if I am wrong, feel free to correct me. All right.
Yeah.
So let's. Okay. I want to lay out my stance first. I want to make it abundantly clear where I stand, and I want to make abundantly clear what I understand. All right.
Right.
So it seems, from what I understand, Calvinism is a doctrine that is centered around the sovereignty of God.
Yeah. So Reformed theology in general would the way we would present it is we would start with sovereignty because everything after that, everything surrounding it is the follow-up, the conclusion to what does it mean to have a fully sovereign God. So,
okay, this is good. Okay, so now personal stance. All right, I believe wholeheartedly in God's sovereignty. You will not hear me blaspheme and say that God has this reckless love for me.
Yeah, it's more of it becomes more a dichotomy of how do you reconcile sovereignty with human agency? Right? Are you saying humans have zero freedom whatsoever? But continue on.
We'll dig into that. Okay, so he is above all creation. I truly believe that. Oh no, my laptop! Don't do this to me.
Oh no.
Okay, he is above all creation, even heaven and its angels. Okay.
Right.
So even time as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So I believe that God is omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, immutable, and self-sufficient. Okay, I believe all that. The great I am. All right. This is my confession, and this one is my stance. Okay, I want to make it abundantly clear.
Right.
I'm speaking a bit fast. Forgive me. The beer did it. If I say anything wrong, the beer did it.
Yeah.
All right. So I understand that there are 5 points of Calvinism.
Mm-hmm.
Tulip, all right. T, total depravity.
Right.
U, unconditional election. L, limited atonement. I, irresistible grace. And P, perseverance of the saints.
Yeah.
It's very common for doubters to agree with some of these points, and true enough, same for me. I only have like some disagreements or some
Right.
or perhaps some misunderstandings. We'll see about like 2 or 3. All right. So let's
Yeah.
go into, for example, total depravity first.
Right.
All right. If I'm not mistaken, this one is to teach that all humanity is inherently sinful.
Right.
Okay, and completely unable to earn salvation.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
Generally,
okay?
right, yeah.
Doctrine of grace. Okay.
If you got objections, then you place it on the table. Yeah.
Feel free to interrupt.
Yeah. So total depravity, no, there's no questions here, right?
No questions about that.
Right,
We
okay.
cannot save ourselves through our works. Yeah.
Oh,
through
it's
our own
more.
efforts.
It's more of a nature.
Oh, yeah.
Question: Are men inherently okay? They sin, but that's not their nature, or the fact that they sin all the time is their nature. Which total depravity, although it's not saying you're evil all the time, always. But we're not saying you're radically depraved, where you only desire evil all the time. We're saying all of your considerations are tainted.
Yes.
Right, whatever it is.
Exceptions for Adam and Eve.
You would, people would say exceptions for Adam and Eve before the fall.
Before the fall. Yeah.
But again, I would not say that their nature is perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Their nature is fallible. Creatures are always fallible, no matter what. Even before the state of sin, creatures will always be lured away. So
fallible without the presence of God, right?
that's definitely that's assumed. So there is always, I guess, a question of why is it that the one act of determining good and evil,
Yes.
eating of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, why does that change our nature?
Yes.
And because the answer is it must. Because man's heart initially has to be good. God cannot make bad things. God cannot make evil things.
Yeah. God Himself said it is good.
Yeah. So the act of Adam rebelling against God, in obeying Him, earning death, essentially, that turned his heart. That changed not just his own heart, covenantally all of mankind. So yeah, but if no rejection on that, then we can actually move on.
Okay. So there is a small little question that I have. So they were not really sinful in nature per se. Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
the fall.
Yeah. But you will see that my biggest struggle is actually an umbrella theme that is to actually determine who is the author of sin.
Right.
Yeah, never mind. You know what? Let's move on for now.
Yeah, move on.
The unconditional election. Okay, this one I believe it. If I didn't misunderstand, it states that God before creation, and then is and entirely based on His own will, He will choose who He wants to save.
Yeah.
You know,
So
the salvation part, the salvific part. Okay.
So the fact that Jesus says, "The Father gives me all, and I lose not one, but raise them up on the last day," right? Means everyone that He is willing to save will be saved. Now, funnily enough, preachers on the onset, they like this homiletics, right? They want to have the homiletics of Jesus will not. Jesus is a perfect savior. He cannot fail. He will save everyone. He is determined to save. But all the Calvinist does is basically just point out the logical conclusion, which means the ones that are not saved are not because Jesus doesn't want to save them. Yeah. Which again, that has to be our conclusion, because otherwise your conclusion is they're not saved.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, so it's either Jesus does not want to save them or Jesus cannot save them.
Yeah.
And the cannot save one is outright heresy.
It's
That's
gone.
no.
That's a failure. Yeah.
So, but the problem, and that's it actually. So I do have a problem with this, and that's because of the implication of an unjust God. It implies that, at least in my logic of justice, before our birth, it has been already set whether we are to be saved or not. And for such a complex world, this will raise a lot of problems, like evangelism. Why evangelize?
Okay. Do you want to tackle that now?
Maybe I'll just lay it all out.
Okay.
Yeah.
You list it all out. Remind me if I forget down the line. Okay.
Okay. Specifically in evangelism, I believe it's also got to do with.
Yeah. Why evangelism? Why bother?
Yeah. So I believe even John Calvin himself also said, "Oh, it's not for us to decide. Not for us to determine whether one is elected or not."
Right.
But at the same, So basically, shoot your shot. But it wouldn't. But wouldn't this also take away from the sovereignty of God in claiming that we need to go into the harvest field blindly,
Right.
and like those that are predestined, well, they're already gonna come. They're already achieved
coming, so why
salvation.
bother?
Yeah.
Type of thing. Yeah, sure. Okay, so
Okay.
we'll put that on the fridge.
Yeah.
Pin that on.
And then we can stretch it also into the authorship of sin, and the
Who-
example
who
is
authored?
also who authored it,
Yeah.
okay.
Why did it start? How did it come about? Right.
Esau, Jacob, yes,
Uh-huh.
name it. So next, limited atonement, okay. If I didn't mistaken, this one's the painful one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is basically the logical conclusion of unconditional
Yes. It really
election.
Yeah. So with this problem of why evangelize, right? This point actually feels like an attempt to explain why so many people don't believe or confess that Jesus is Christ, that Jesus is Lord, that Christ is Lord. And even in John 3:16, I believe that this one's a very common objection to Calvinism. For
John,
God so loved the world that he,
whomsoever
yeah,
may believe.
exactly. So there is God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. So this one shows that Jesus is really sufficient. Okay, he is sufficient.
Right. Uh-huh.
And whoever believes in him, the condition, shall not perish, but have everlasting life.
Right. And those who do not believe are condemned already.
Exactly. So it's, there's that condition.
Right,
but then, if God chose his followers before birth, and on a general basis,
Uh-huh.
I'm not talking exceptional cases. I'm perfectly fine with exceptions like Pharaoh being raised to be defeated. I'm perfectly fine with
Right,
the
but
ones that were canonized. The ones that became the story.
Okay.
Like poor thing, they really became. Yeah.
right. So, but again, your how to say, your sovereignty kind of has to
Yeah.
stretch beyond.
Exactly. So,
Because
so if it happens for this, then wouldn't it also extend for me? Wouldn't it extend for
Yeah.
the average Joe?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Then.
So it's like oh, I'm already safe despite not believing. So I hit jackpot even before birth. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah.
So
There's that.
It's like it feels like it actually invalidated the condition of believing.
Sure. Okay.
But I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine.
problem.
Well, you list that first.
Irresistible grace. Yeah, I
So
I
you
got
want-
nothing against this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, all the-
Perseverance of the saints. This one's about the predestined
Yeah.
one.
So
I have nothing against this. Those who are truly
Yeah.
saved, those who have tasted and seen of his goodness, his glory, his
well,
wonder.
persevere, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, come on, lah. You're not you don't go back to eating trash, lah. Once you get access to 3-star Michelin food.
No, yeah. Three.
Yeah.
Hebrews talks about
Yeah.
those who tasted the heavenly manna, they cannot return. They
Yeah.
can't possibly go back. Now, those that do go back,
The assumption is that,
face
yeah.
judgment that the author of Hebrews cannot describe. But we'll get there
Yeah.
when we do. So, okay. Is that all
So so highlight once again to bring it all together the broad theme that I'm actually unable to accept in regards to that I'm really unable to wrap my head around.
Right.
I don't want to act like I can't accept this, therefore it's wrong. No,
Right,
okay,
right.
I'm not that guy.
Yeah, understandable.
But
Right.
yeah, okay. So the concept that I really can't wrap my head around is actually the concept of a tyrant God.
Yeah.
And an evil, unjust God who
Yeah.
condemns his creations to eternal judgment.
Right.
For him making us fall short. That's the
Right.
point.
So-
Who authored the sin, and I know that's the thing. I know the crimes that I have against God.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna be very honest, and how I still fall short to this day, despite of me knowing that I am saved. So it's like to accuse God of making me sin is like blasphemy.
Which right. So obviously that one is just straight up a caricature.
Oh, yeah.
No real Calvinist will say. So here's the caricature, right? God points a gun in your head and say, "Don't believe or sin."
Yeah.
You have to sin because you're not part of the elect. You're reprobate, and I don't want to save you. So you have to sin. You have to not believe in me.
Yeah.
Problem. This is part of the nature
Mm.
question that we don't need a gun pointed to our head to want to sin, to hate God.
Yes.
That's like our nature.
Yes.
It's like, well,
It's like if you can break God's rules, you will.
I will. And if it's up to me to believe, I will not.
Mm.
It's really that simple. And that's why the presentation for Paul, for example, for grace, it's always not equal. He says grace is the gift of God, but sin, death is the wages of sin.
Yes.
So, okay. So one you earn,
Yes.
the other is a gift. One is wage, one is a gift. Everyone knows
Yes.
what it looks like. You earn your wage.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily earn a gift ever.
Yeah, one
If
is
we-
deserving, one is not
Right.
deserving. Yeah.
So that's always presented as that.
Yes.
And there seems to not be a problem
Mhm.
in the sense that well, nobody will obviously say, well, I've been good. I deserve God to pay me with the gift of grace.
Yeah.
So nobody can answer
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So here comes the assumption that I feel gets secretly inserted
Yes.
into the equation, and that is that God owes you
Yeah.
to save you, essentially.
Exactly.
That-
So
yeah.
if my train of thought is sound, then the implication is that this grace that redeems me and says that I'm enough, what's it called, was, unnecessary because the sin is, if I really don't have a choice
Mm-hmm.
to sin, then it's like it almost like it takes away that responsibility from me, which
Right.
feels incredibly false.
Which which I don't think so. So we're talking two different sets of
Oh yeah.
categories here. Number one, where we're talking justification wise, your status before God. That one, no man can change. You
Yes,
cannot change
right.
your status before God.
Agreed, yeah.
You're a murderer. You go up before a judge.
Yeah.
And you don't get to say anything. You don't say, well, I did charity, I did this, I did that.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to
Right.
kill that guy. I had to. No, you legally, forensically, you're a murderer. The death penalty has to come to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Jesus pardons you. So you are justified. The category is done here. The
Yeah.
justification category is done. When you walk out the door, should you live like a murderer for the rest of your life? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
But not because you don't want to be judged for murder again. That is already done. That's why when we talk about forgiveness, we're talking about forgiveness that's done once for all. Which, to be fair, I'll grant, doesn't make sense. There's sins that I haven't done. Are you saying Jesus already prepaid all those sins? And the answer is yes,
Yeah.
because he can. God, we already established this. God is outside of time.
Outside of time. Yep.
If he's outside of time, he can pay
Yeah.
your whole bundle, your
Yeah.
whole price,
Yeah.
start to end. Right. So this is not necessarily a conflict
Yeah.
with with your future sin, your past sin.
Mm-hmm.
Who made me sin? So let's tackle that as well.
Yeah.
Right. Who kind of originates sin? Matthew, my pastor,
Mm-hmm.
kind of did a sermon on this. No, not specifically on the topic, but we were talking about law, because God establishes law, even in the garden. But notice, the funny thing is, we talk about law and grace, and we kind of assume that law is this like restrictive, prohibitive thing,
Yeah.
right? Oh, if only the law wasn't there, maybe
Yeah.
I wouldn't be so bad. But that's not true, because notice, the only thing that Adam could earn in the garden was only death.
Yeah.
So it's false to say, well, Adam needed to do this to have dominion, and Adam needed to do this to have. No, he literally already has everything. He has life. And we can assume he has eternal life.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that puts him into death was disobedience.
Yes. The detaching from the source
Right.
of life. Yeah.
So he literally has access to life himself, God.
Yep.
His presence, Shekinah glory, all that.
Mhm.
He has all tools of dominion in the garden. He has. We're told he has every seed.
Oh yeah.
He has every animal. He doesn't need to work for all that. He will have to cultivate it. He will have to grow in obedience and all that. But it's kind of like, if, if I tell you to take care of my lawn and I give you all the high state-of-the-art equipment, someone can definitely say, well, if anyone has that equipment, obviously I can do it. And that's kind of the point. Adam was not particularly special or good, so Adam never even earned anything. The fact is, the only thing he could earn was death. So the inclination to straight up look at all the things he has and then look at the one thing that can earn him death, and he goes, I want that one. I want to die, literally. So that kind of shifts all the blame away from God, right? You can't back to the gardening analogy. I give you all the state of the art equipment, and then you choose to use a rusty, a garden snipper,
Yeah.
and then you cut yourself. And it's like, well, that's kind of your fault. You already have everything. Why'd you use the one thing that can kill you? So that again Now, of course, you might say that doesn't really answer the whole.
Yeah, because,
Where
because
is the desire?
the scary part that well, the thing that I can't wrap my head around is the motive element. Yes, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is right there.
Yeah.
And he has everything. So there's that door to actually choose to not
Right.
have God with him. But if the predestination, the theology of predestination, if that one is true, then the motive of God would have been to actually set Adam up for failure.
Yeah. Which I actually don't think is impossible or makes him
Yeah,
evil.
it's
So
not
okay.
necessarily. Yeah.
Let me, I guess, cook a little bit here.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Go for it.
Because we kind of notice a few things in creation account. For example, we notice that marriage was a thing. So if you really think about it, right, marriage is eventually the institution that God uses to redeem. Right, the final redemption act in Revelation was there's a marriage supper. So okay, so think about it in this sense, right? If I tell you, hey, here is a method of redemption, the assumption is there's going to be someone falling. There's going to be a need of it. Okay,
A need for marriage.
a need for redemption.
need for
Essentially, if I assume there's a need for redemption, I'm assuming someone's going to fall.
Okay.
Right? It's a Chekhov's gun kind of thing. Have
see.
you ever heard?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Chekhov's gun. You enter a room, there is a gun. By the end of the scene, the gun will be used.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I hope I don't use this gun.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
foreshadowing.
yeah.
Marriage is kind of that foreshadowing.
Yes.
You already have the institution that God will use after sin, before sin even happens. So you can indeed, and I don't think it's wrong to say God did plan, or at least he had it in mind. I wouldn't say he only had it in mind. He ordained Adam to not meet the final standard because, again, we're gonna shift away from the humanistic center. You are not the center. Adam is also not the center. The Father's goal is to make the Son all in all. His goal is to glorify the Son above all, and if that includes you needing to fall so that the Son can come in and redeem all of you in the glorious act of giving his life and all those things, which regardless whether or not it's planned or not, it's beautiful, right? The fact that it is planned is even more beautiful. If it's like a thing that, oh no, this happened, I guess I have to, that's actually gonna that actually loses the sentimental impact, if I want to argue sentimentally. But yeah, God, if we argue logically as we do, sovereignty, he has to not just know that things will happen, he has to ordain.
He has to allow it.
He has to literally allow and actively not stop it from happening. Then yeah, those things have to occur. Adam had to fall.
Okay.
So now that doesn't make it.
Yeah, this one, I understand that you're getting it from an authorship perspective.
Right.
So if this one's true, it's like basically saying this artist he made this beautiful jar, proceeds to smash it himself in order to put it back together.
Right. So
And yes, no doubt, when it's put back together, it's even more beautiful. With all the gold inlays and whatever.
so that's interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, so
Now, yeah. So
it seems like it comes in conflict with a bit of a, it's like a erratic kind of.
it would be erratic
Yeah.
if again.
It's like painting God as an erratic character.
Yeah, which I
Yeah.
think that's because we did exactly that. We kind of put God in a creature
Oh
category.
yeah.
God, remember, we talked about God's nature. God doesn't have personalities or passions or all those things,
He is
right?
all of it.
The fact that he
once.
operates this
Yes.
way
Yes.
is his nature.
Mm.
Like, we can genuinely say, for example, sometimes, Chinkang is not being Chinkang. Like, that's something we can legitimately say, right? Because yeah, we're sometimes this, sometimes that.
Yeah.
We change because
Yes,
we
yes.
as creatures change. God can't.
Exactly.
So the way he operates-
he is perfection.
Yeah.
So it's like, to that's why it seems like the act of introducing sin intentionally is like, it didn't. I couldn't really wrap my head around it, because if God is perfection, then why allow the entrance of sin?
Which is interesting because
Yeah. No, why? No, not allow. Sorry. Why intentionally introduce in a way?
Right, which I cannot say God intentionally.
Yeah. That one
Because
seems.
Now I understand. I understand it.
Oh, yeah.
It gets really off. But again, I think the main principle you always have to put in your mind is the fact that God is not creature.
Yes.
God,
Yes. Okay.
whatever you think is odd in a creature function, can be not odd for God to function a certain way, because again, we're talking about completely separate
I see.
essence, completely separate being, right? Not even being, just straight up. Again, essence. I would call it the divine essence.
Yes.
It works that way. And to say, well, it doesn't make sense to me. You are already flirting with the idea that you can make sense of God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like it or not, as much questions as we have, we kind of can't go there.
Oh, yeah.
And as the Calvinist, you're only making that clear. Hey, we're saying what is,
Yeah.
and if it seems weird, we're just saying there are some barriers we can't go through. We can't straight up and say, well, God is just being weird. Why he make a puppet? Bad puppet, don't do this, and then make the puppet does it, and then it says bad puppet
I see.
smashes it.
Yes.
Right, makes him look schizophrenic and all that. Again,
Yeah.
that's because that's the human analogy. It fails.
Yeah.
The human looks at that kind of scenario and go, well, that's a weirdo. But
Yeah.
again, God is outside, literally
Yes.
just outside.
Hey,
Of that.
have you ever heard? I know you have heard of this, like the mastermind kind of interpretation.
Which is
It's like he knows all things. He is above it all. Above time and everything, and he knows every outcome and all. Yeah, but how say doesn't have to directly intervene in order to get his will. In order for his will to be done.
I don't really like that.
Yeah.
Because we have statements by Paul. For example, the quotation from Parmenides where he says, "In him we live and move and have our being."
Yes.
So to say that there's even distance of God and the existence, right? The fact of things happening, and
Yeah.
there's distance between that and God.
He is omnipresent. Yeah.
I can't say, right?
Yeah.
So I would be squeamish to
Yes.
say, well, when it's evil, God didn't really touch that. When there's
Yeah.
good, God is always there. I think that's nearly deistic.
Oh, yeah.
To
Okay,
kind of
okay,
say God turn the clock.
Yes.
He puts it on the table, and then when the clock messes up, it's the clock.
Yeah.
Because God's
Yeah.
hand is away from the clock. But
Yeah.
then again, that's not how the authors of the Bible present God to function.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah. From this, then I'm actually taking away from the sovereignty of God. right?
Because
I see.
you're engaging, you're flirting at least with deism already at that point.
I see. So same. Okay. I know. Okay. Then for the perspective of hell, where hell is just a place that God is not present, that would also have to be taken away.
Yeah, no, because we're literally told in Revelation,
Yes.
the one who's pouring the cup of wrath is
Yes.
the wrath of the Lamb.
It's the wrath of the Lamb.
Literally one of the nature.
Okay, okay, I
One,
get you.
Yeah. So the fact that, and it's personal, right? It's a personal administration. It's not a box that God forgot about.
Yeah.
Like, he puts all the unbelievers in a box and then decides to forget about it. No,
Yeah.
he passionately pours his wrath on them. And again, for all those who are like, oh, that's evil, whatever. Well, we're assuming as if the people in hell are gonna repent. They're not. They're gonna continuously hate God. So it's a mutual kind of hatred. So don't worry about it. Anyway, what else do we want to tackle?
I want to continue diving into the personality of God.
Right.
Since we mentioned about how God's personality won't change.
Nature.
Well,
Yeah. Mhm.
I have like one verse that I can come up with that kind of like might suggest otherwise, but I want to see how you react to this.
Sure, yeah.
So in Genesis chapter 6, it was about the wickedness of man. And in verse 6, it was mentioned that the Lord regretted that he had
Yeah.
made man on the earth.
So he relented, he repented even, some translations say.
Yeah.
So those passages are usually used to say, see, God has to react to some degree of evil or whatever. Again, that's I would say that's really problematic, because I can just throw you, if we're just playing proof text, right? I can just throw you another passage, which I believe is from Haggai, where God says, I am Yahweh, I change not. That's literally just the best. So clearly, some of our passages has to govern or has to harmonize with each other, right? And this is kind of what I was talking about the other time, where we see God expressing certain things, even though our confession says, well, God is without passions, without feelings and all that. Because again, feeling is something that responds
Yes.
to things all around. God cannot have that. So why does he describe himself as having those things? And I have to say, every single time that happens, that is a condescension. That's him humiliating himself so that he can relate to man. This is what I'm feeling. This is how man can communicably partake in God's nature, right? Because we also can't have a God that we absolutely cannot relate with,
Yeah.
right? Now, granted, all the condescensions, all the parts where God has to lower himself to a level that's understandable by man, that kind of culminates in the incarnation of the Lord Jesus Christ, where he really becomes man, where we can immediately, without hesitation, say, yes, the person of Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, did grow. He did experience sadness. He did experience real time having to react, having to grow, having to respond to future knowledge that was not previously made aware of him. Right? He has to learn. The fact that we're told he goes to the temple, and what does he do? He learns. Now, he is above even most of the teachers at the time.
Yeah.
But again, he still has to react. He faces times where he cries because Lazarus died and all those things. So I think those are gracious things where God condescends. He has to humiliate, and that's the wonderful thing, whereby you have to acknowledge this is a God that's not so far that he's not willing to touch you, right? He's like so far away. He's like, oh, that's disgusting.
Right.
I can't even touch that. He genuinely goes down in those times. Like one of the example I was doing a Bible study on Genesis 46, I think, and this is Bathsheba, where Jacob gets a vision from God that when he goes to Egypt, he's gonna get enslaved in the future. So, but God did promise, but when you walk out of Egypt, you'll be richer, which they did eventually.
Yeah.
So, okay. So here's the thing. Omnipresent, omnipotent God, you're not allowed to doubt.
Yes.
You're literally not allowed to doubt. Not only that, you're not allowed to even ask God to repeat himself, right? If we're going to be strict about it. But Jacob is, as a creature, hesitant.
Yeah.
How's it going to look like? Well, I can't imagine my own family being enslaved for 400 years. That doesn't make sense. That's a creature. We can't, we think past next month and it's like, oh, what am I even going to be doing next 2 months?
Let alone getting out.
400 years. Yeah. Slavery, 400 years. And in the account, God actually gives him the vision a second time. Just the same exact vision. And he just promises him the exact same thing. I'll bring you out. I'll give you a new land. Right? So the fact that God is willing to repeat himself is condescension, and it's a grace. It's a gracious type of thing. Right? We actually have to acknowledge, God doesn't need to repeat himself. It's like if your mom or dad is like, don't make me repeat myself. It's like, sometimes that's valid. If you're not paying attention and your parents realize, oh, he's not paying attention, they can give the ultimatum of, don't make me repeat myself. Well, God essentially can make that ultimatum all the time because he's sovereign. If you're not paying attention, that's your sin. But God does. He repeats the promise, the exact same thing, just to reassure Jacob to go when he's not even allowed to doubt. Doubting is a sin. So, but yeah, so those are, again, things where we wouldn't say dogmatically,
Okay.
God repents, God forgets, or he reacts, or he regrets doing certain things.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are towards supposed weaknesses in or reactiveness in God's character. But what about what does Calvinism say about some of the good traits of God's character? His loving kindness, his generosity, his mercy.
Right.
His goodness.
And the answer usually
Yeah.
is, for example, if we're talking about elect people,
Oh, yeah.
right, those who he chose forever, that's kind of where Calvinism kind of shines, actually, because that's where we can say, yes, you, in the mind of God, before literally anything, were chosen. And that's the most, I guess the word I can use is the most complacent kind of love, right? The fact that you don't have to prove
Yeah.
anything to me, and the fact that you don't bring a single worth to me, and you're still chosen and you're still brought about, and is a massive recipient of love. The fact that that's the case, that's the kind of homiletics that preacher wants. Oh, God chose you not because of anything you ever did badly.
Yeah.
That's the homiletics everyone wants. But that's the basic thesis of Calvinism. The fact that Paul says before Isaac and Esau ever did anything, sorry, Jacob and Esau ever did anything, one I love, one I hate.
So
Just to show, yeah.
So God is so according to Calvinism, God is he's above all reactive emotions.
Yeah, yeah.
And for these well, so-called good emotions, or good expressions.
Yeah. Good natures. These are his natures, yeah.
Yes. Those are, okay lah. Dare I say, God's choice?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
chooses
we
to
can say,
express,
he literally chooses, And that's
One of all
right.
things. Yeah, God would
and
be
that's
allowed to
the
choose.
thing.
Yeah.
So even the fact that
Yeah.
the way we interpret choosing
Yeah.
is different. Like, for example, we're creatures.
Yes.
I say, I choose to swim in the shaman pool.
Yeah.
And then God strikes the pool, and then now we don't have a pool anymore. Well, too bad. My choosing has zero agency, because I'm a creature. Like,
You only get to work with what you got.
I have to work within creation.
You can't
God
create
doesn't.
something out
yeah.
of nothing.
God doesn't.
Yes.
If God says, I want to love this sinner regardless of his sin, he can by giving his son. Right? The choosing for God and for man is completely opposite.
Yeah.
Right? The fact that he can actively give his son to come down to sacrifice his life, and we can't even, if
So,
if it's raining outside, we suddenly can't do whatever we
So
want.
if God says He wants to love us, He'll make us and then love us.
yeah, he'll make us. We'll sin.
make us unlovable. And
Yeah, even if we're unlovable,
I'm getting the hang of this.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. So and again, it's one of those things where we like the homily, we like the easy sermon application of God loving you.
Yeah, it's nice.
But are you ready to face the logical conclusion, which is that means
Sin
God has to
more,
hate
yeah.
some.
Yeah.
Yeah, because not everyone
Yeah.
goes to heaven.
Yes.
That one you cannot deny. So yeah, those are the kind of questions that I usually face, and that's usually how I would answer them. And usually, if they bring up passages, I do have a handful of few.
I
that
genuinely
tackle.
still find it a little hard to wrap my head around.
The violation of free will, maybe.
Yeah, the violation
Yeah,
of free will.
which-
So some people are genuinely never going to have no possible chance of experiencing the salvific death. I mean, the salvific act of Jesus.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, like it or not, that's
Yeah.
something we have to learn, because if we want to share in God's nature, we want to slowly learn
Oh, yeah.
to be like Him. We do have to learn to hate those things that God hates.
Yeah.
Right. And to say that God doesn't hate anything is a lie.
Yes.
So there will be things that, again, just straight up confounds people. But Paul says he makes the foolish things of this world, the grandiose things. He makes those the honorable things. So the fact that this idea of free will being actually very low on the scale of priority for God, that offends a lot of people,
Yeah.
and that's fine. I mean, I just remember, if people like to talk about free will type of stuff, I remember Nebuchadnezzar, because a vision comes to him and says, well, you might be king of all the earth right now, but how'd you like if you eat grass for like 3 years? And then he literally
Eats grass.
acts like a donkey and starts eating grass.
Yeah.
Literally. Whoever wants to talk about free will to be like this high and mighty thing that man exercises, God straight up just violates this man's entire free will. He just eats grass like a donkey for like years on end. And then at the end of it, when he comes to his senses after like chugging don't know how many grass,
Yeah.
he doesn't go, I can't believe my free will just got violated. What does he do? He says, now I know
That
there is a God in Israel.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you experience that, I mean, I don't know about you, but if I lost all agency and I'm forced to just eat grass, that's like the proof that there is something even beyond my will.
Yeah.
That there is something like just straight up in like hierarchy wise beyond wills and all that stuff, right? So it's pretty funny. Again, whoever wants to talk about stuff like, oh, free will, this, what about human agency, human responsibility? When you get to heaven, you talk to Nebuchadnezzar. You ask him how it feels when he was eating grass for all those years.
Wait,
because
if that's the case, then is free will like still a thing?
free will is still a thing, but again, remember hierarchy.
Yes.
If you maybe for example you talk about
Exists,
coding.
right? Ah,
Right,
This
right.
one comes.
Some-
This one comes into like infralapsarians and supralapsarians. Yeah, you got to help me out, bro.
So the argument is actually, if I'm gonna truncate it,
Yes.
well, let's just make it two, infra and supralapsarian.
Yes.
I would lean more on supralapsarian, but I'll make some caveat.
Okay.
Basically, for infra,
Mhm.
it's the creation first, the fall, and then the decree of election. Right?
Yes.
But for supra, it's literally all behind. Like God decrees election first, and then He makes everything.
Then only.
So the choosing and the redemption and all that is before. Now, I would disagree with like conventional supralapsarian, because they would say, well, this is like a contract that God enters into with Himself, which that's a very questionable language. God does not need to make contracts with Himself. He is covenantal.
Yes.
That's His being. That is how He's gonna operate, right? Where in a sense that there is literally no distance between the three persons. They're so close together that
Their will
what the
are
Father,
perfect,
their will is one. So so I wouldn't agree, but we literally have passages like the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world. I don't think there's any way. Who was it slain for if there was no fall yet? And the answer is, you have to conclude the sacrifice was made. It was a prepaid plan, essentially.
Okay.
It's an all expense paid. He already planned redemption to the point of sacrificial. I mean, you really got to think about that on a metaphysical level.
Yeah.
How is the lamb slain before there were lambs, before death enters into the world, before there is such a concept
Before
as
there is world.
yeah. So like it or not, you have to go all extreme. You have to go all in or all out.
Okay.
The infralapsarian, sadly, kind of lacks telos, shall I say?
Okay,
It kind of lacks a clean eschatology because of how it waits, of how there's like delay between the actions. So that's kind of how I would truncate it. Of course, it's a really long argument about
Yeah.
agency and all that.
I'll go
so.
do my homework for that one. Yeah.
But it's not. Yeah, but it's actually very simple. We got passages that straight up says things like, "I chose you before all creation." So I chose Jacob. I love Jacob before both of them even exist. So going full supra in terms of like the order of election, the order of decrees.
Actually, okay, about the Jacob I loved. No, Esau I hated. Jacob loved. Like apparent. Are you aware of like the interpretation?
That is
I'm
not
not
the
sure if this
person?
one is true, but it's like it's not really hated, but it's loved less. Or yeah, I'm not sure if you are aware. Of that.
So let's go to context.
Yes.
In the Romans, Paul says, Jacob I love, Esau I hated. What's that? That's a quotation.
Yes.
That's an Old Testament quotation from Malachi 1,
Yes.
where he says, Jacob I love, Esau I hated. So usually the anti-Calvinist argument is, well, you missed the context of the original quotation from Malachi. He's not talking about persons. He's talking about nations, which I would say I agree in the sense that the original context is talking about nations, because God says, after He says, Jacob I love, Esau I hated, and then He follows the argument, but you say to me, wherein have you loved us? They're asking, where's the proof? Where's the proof that you love us? And God literally says that I destroyed everyone else. So the context is God literally destroyed all their neighboring nations, and He had mercy, right? Not even show like extra love. The fact that He spared them from destruction, He spared the nation state of Israel from destruction, is proof of love.
Okay.
Right? So you can't say loveless, because loveless looks like destroying the nation
Yes.
of the Edomites. So yeah, that's a questionable application.
Yeah.
Now, of course, now you might say, well, that's talking about nations and bodies and people groups.
Uh-huh.
But okay, but people groups have peoples and individuals in them. So naturally, you can conclude individual election on a passage that talks about corporate election, because it's like saying, well, God predestines the plane to fall, but he doesn't predestine who joins in the plane. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
God is either all powerful or not powerful.
Yeah. So he has to decree every single detail of it or none.
Yeah.
And again, the less love, he destroyed the nations in Malachi. So less love is questionable there.
Yeah. So, he
has to hate. That's a hatred. Yeah.
It's a pretty good translation there.
Yeah. Like or not. So I would encourage you to read the Malachi one.
Yes.
So yeah, that is the show. God shows his love in contrast to his hatred. And that should not be like a thing we're squeamish about. Is there anything else, Chinkam? You got your side?
I got one question about total depravity, because this question is one that I got asked like recently by another sister in church. So she mentioned about how like everyone is under sin according to Romans, and how she described it as we're literally controlled by sin, and there's like your free will is not actually free will-ish thing.
And so I would not disagree. That's why I would say free will exists. It's at a very low hierarchy because we are under sin.
Right.
So
I see. Okay. Now here's the question that will come up, where like in the Chinese community, they always mention this word called conscience, like where you do something like immoral and stuff. Like people will blame you and like asking you like, where's your conscience? Everyone in there like knows that conscience is a thing.
Right.
Like, so my question would be, if conscience is a thing, then would that like how would I say? Would that be like a proof that we fail to meet we did not fail every single aspect of the standard that we sin? Like, because for example in James it says like if we fail one point of the the law, we were guilty of failing all of it. But the fact that we have conscience in our hearts like proves that there are still some things that we will keep.
Right.
Like for example, like in Acts, Cornelius is one who fears the law, is mentioned.
Yeah. So exceptions, I'm going to put Cornelius as an exception. I'll tackle him in a bit.
Right.
But I think there's a bit of a false view where for some reason your conscience is like somehow cleaner than your heart, which most of the time, not really the case. Most of the time, if you really want to steal something or you really want to hit a person, you'll like do it regardless. And again, Paul says that it's not that people don't know what's right and wrong. Right? That's actually not what gets disrupted in the fall. Right? Fallen men still knows right and wrong.
Right.
What's the difference? They suppress the truth in unrighteousness. So even your conscience, the fact that you're like, I know killing is wrong, but I'm gonna really like push that down. Right? It's like, for example, the example I like to give is the fact that the atheist would say the ball doesn't exist. Right? God doesn't exist. Morality is like a social construct. That's not a thing. And the Christian's job is only to say, well, no, you're holding down the ball. Because the ball, right, in water will always go up. It will always surface. We're told the sinners or the unbelievers, they push the water ball down because it will naturally go up. The conscience will accuse us of our sin because we're still made in
His image.
God's image.
Yep.
And we're told that he writes his law in our heart. And that's not a New Testament promise. That's a universal thing. The New Testament promise is it'll be written on hearts of flesh. Meanwhile, for the unbeliever, his law is written on hearts of stone. So the conscience still bears false witness, but their heart is stone. They can callous it. They can tank through it. Right? They will push that ball down as hard as they can and then say, well, there's no ball. I don't see any ball. And your job is to say, well, no, you're pushing the ball down the water. You know the ball exists. It's literally in your hand. So conscience is affected by the fall. Not in its ability to distinguish good and evil. It's actually mostly capable of determining most good and evil. What's being marked is essentially your nature, which is the inclination to just
So nature
suppresses
suppresses the
truth and suppresses the truth
The
and
truth.
righteousness,
Right.
right? So, yeah. So I think whenever we kind of say those things like, oh, do you not have conscience? We're kind of assuming somehow the conscience is like the cleanest part
Yeah.
of like our being, which I don't know. Maybe that's like here and there, maybe in Confucianism or whatever. Maybe it's an influence, right? The fact that the spiritual or the more intellectual is cleaner than the flesh because the flesh is dirty. I don't know if that's the case for a lot of like Chinese religion, but it's definitely true culturally. We talk as if our
As if our perspective, as if our truth
like
is
right, as if we're less tainted in the more intellectual, spiritual, conscientious aspect. No, that's not true. Our total depravity means all of you, your entire being, your ontology is now to sin. Your inclination now is to sin. So
Sorry, can you please summarize it again for me? So the existence of a conscience and total depravity. Total depravity argues that
your whole thing, including your
Whole thing?
conscience,
including conscience is
that's
going to lead you
all
to
moral.
sin.
Yeah. That
I can accept that.
inclination.
I can accept that conscience is imperfect
Mhm.
because many times sin makes us compromise. I can accept that.
Okay.
But to have no, I can also accept the part. I can completely understand the part where we cannot earn our own salvation.
Mhm.
It's not happening. Okay.
Right.
But to have no sense of right and wrong.
Yeah, that's not true. Because
Yeah.
Paul says,
wouldn't that go against the total depravity thing?
yeah,
Because
that's
it's not
why.
so total, right?
No, yeah, that's why Paul says,
Yeah.
well, one, if they don't have the law and the prophets,
Yeah.
their conscience accuse them of sin. And I kind of did an exegesis of this.
Yes.
Romans 1 and Romans 10, right? Because their argument is, well, we never had Gentiles, we never had prophets, we never had the law. How can we get accused of things regarding God's law and all these things? And Paul says they have creation. They have, he quotes Psalm 19 where he says, all of the earth screams out that you're disobeying God. So even if your internal faculties fail you, the rest of the world, the rest of the universe literally bears witness to your failure. So and in that sense, there is no such thing as a neutral or an amoral molecule. Every single molecule in the universe is telling you you're not obeying God. And for the unbeliever, that's a permanent fact. They look at the sun, and the only thing that they remember is how their deeds are dark, that they don't want their deeds exposed, and the sun gives light to it, right? The sun is supposed to preach to them of their sin. So, in that sense, total depravity insists that it's not against Paul's saying when he says, it doesn't. Your excuse doesn't follow if you say, "Oh, but I don't know what's good and bad." Nope, that's not a thing. Your own conscience bears witness against you.
Yeah, but I'm under the assumption that total depravity means that I'm only capable of doing wrong.
No, that's also not true.
That's also not true.
But even the good things you do are marked by your
Are tainted.
are tainted.
All right. Okay. I got you.
I'll help him so that I win some favors, or I'll worship God, but so I get famous, maybe in church and all those things, right? So those are the uncleanness that's being introduced. So I would always categorize sin to three things, right? The first one is just outright warfare against God.
Okay.
Obviously, this is not 100% of the time.
Yes.
Right? Not everyone wakes up and thinks, how can I disobey God the most?
But apparently that's a thing.
I know, but
Yeah.
in like normal human functions and faculty, God has benevolent grace, right? Not saving grace, enough benevolent grace to allow mankind to not suffer this kind,
Yes.
right? The other kind of sin, the second kind, I would say, is perversion. It's the good thing, but you introduce the corruption. You
Yes.
introduce something bad. It's Lamborghini is good. Driving recklessly is bad. Driving a Lamborghini recklessly is the perversion, right? So there's the good thing, there's the bad thing. You mix the bad thing. That's the perversion. And then the third kind of sin is the kind of sin Christians engage in, which is not outright rebellion. It not necessarily an an innate tendency to make something impure is generally our missing of the mark,
Yeah.
our failure to meet the standard that now applies as a Christian.
Yes.
Right? I have not loved my brother enough. Is that sin? Yes. Would you say that's the same sin that is like outright rebellion or outright perversion? No. Right? And that's why we kind of need these categories so that when you talk to Christians, you're not talking to them as if they're constantly engaging in warfare against God. That's where the distinction, I feel, needs to be made.
Okay. Okay.
Perversion still does happen. Like
Yes.
Christians have like honest intents, but it's either uninformed by scripture or it's still, again, they're immature. And so the perversion does happen.
Yes.
But if you're mature, if you're really like, sanctified, you have access to the means of grace, you should not engage in just straight up warfare against God. Right? And that's why we can say, oh, I'm a Christian, but I'm gay, but Jesus is not God, or anything along the line where it's just straight up warfare against God's revelation. That's where we can say, oh, that's literally outside of Christianity
Yeah.
type of category.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. Is that all from your side?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Well,
I'm satisfied. Yeah.
right. Okay. Oh, maybe I'll end with a passage from John. Can
Yeah.
we turn our Bibles to John 6? Now let me find the passage for it. Actually, though, it could be verse 37. Can someone check verse 37 for me? The audience will have to suffer us flipping through our digital Bible.
Okay. All that the Father gives me will come to
sorry.
me. Yeah.
I'll start with verse 35.
All right.
Jesus said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that comes to me shall never hunger, and he that believes on me shall never thirst. But I say to you that ye also have seen me, and believe not. All that the Father gives me comes to me, shall come to me, and he that comes to me I will in no way cast out. For I come down out of heaven not to do mine own will, but the will of him who sent me. And this is the Father's will, which hath sent me, that of all which he hath given me I should lose nothing, but should raise it up again at the last day. And this is the will of him that sent me, that everyone which sees the Son and believes in him may have everlasting life, and I'll raise him up at the last day. So I think that's like an undisputed passage. I know people like to say, well, I believe that. I don't believe the rest of the Calvinist baggage. But again, all that we're discussing until now is just talking about how complete Jesus' work of redemption has to be, right? When we see unbelievers, when we see things that don't fit our categories, why is there still evil? Why is there things outside of this and that? What we cannot say is Jesus failed in his redemption, or there was something outside of the Father's plan. There was this one thing that slipped out of the Father's hand. There's this one thing that slipped out of Jesus' hand, right? So, and I think, honestly, we don't really have the time to do it. It's going to be
Yeah.
like 2 hours plus.
Yeah.
But if you read all of John 6, it literally is some of the most Calvinistic passage that you just cannot escape. The whole, you don't believe in me, why? Because you are not of my sheep. That implies, there are some that are simply not. So, those things, I would just encourage people to read it. We kind of don't have, I guess I'll recommend the book. This is
Yeah.
a pretty fun book. Now, it might get you into trouble.
For real.
I don't know, but just with the title itself. So the book, I'll encourage people to kind of check if they're interested in topics like Calvinism, is 75 Bible questions your instructors pray you won't ask. And the author is Gary North. Just by the title itself, you kind of know you might get into some troubles. So, it's free online. You download the book and you'll be like, hey, can we do this for our next Bible study? And they're going to be like, give me that book and I'll get back to you. And like,
Never.
so, yeah. But again, I don't think, and again, here's the thing, right? There's this trend of like cage stage Calvinism where people are like, they're discovering the truths of Calvinism. They're fully bought in, and then they just go whack. They go insane. They
The
hammer.
extreme ones are kind of scary.
Yeah, I understand, and I really don't know what causes that. In a sense, like I had this experience. I know people who kind of had this transition-ish where their theology just kind of get ransacked, and no matter how gently I do it, right? No matter how softly I push the doctrine, they go whack, they go insane, they go straight up, I've been lied to all my life. I'm like, Yeah, that's kind of true, but you also had obligations to learn. So,
Yeah.
but it's fine. I don't think people should do it. I don't think it's inherent to like Reformed theology. I think it happens everywhere, right? So, yeah, I would just encourage people, if they are studying Calvinism and they're getting really into it, and if you have a lot of opposition, don't get despair. Don't get discouraged, and at the same time, don't get insane just because it's almost like a conspiracy theory thing. The fact that you discover something new and you're constantly being challenged, that I guess that gives like a little bit of a exhilarating feeling, right?
does, yeah.
You against the world type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So
I mean, we do love a good underdog story.
right.
You know what?
In yourself.
Next product, a cap made of tin foil.
And then we discuss flat Earth. That would be hilarious. Well, okay. All right. I guess that's it. We'll end this episode here. We got 3 more episodes to cover.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let me do one final thing. If you're not subscribed, you're not whatever, don't click the bell icon. Apparently, that's a bad thing. I don't know. Yeah. Apparently, it's a bad thing. Apparently, you shouldn't do it. So, yeah, just subscribe. Just pay attention to my channel. We're going to be posting quite a bit of stuff because we're going to record. We got a lot more episodes to record after this.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, stay tuned. And we'll catch you all next time. This has been Kingdom Cast signing off.
Cheers. Bye.
Yes.
All right. Pause. I mean,